Hi, this is Mrs. Zhu, and we're going to be working on the practice quiz number 5 for sections 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5 in the textbook on adding, subtracting fractions, and also customary units. Just to briefly review, when you are dividing fractions, there is a strategy that we learned in class, and that is called I, heart, K.F.C. Remember that I stands for making the fraction improper. That's a must. The heart doesn't really stand for anything except that we love fractions, and maybe K.F.C. And then K stands for keeping the first, F stands for flipping the second fraction, and then C stands for changing the sign. Okay, K.F.C. That's for dividing only. After we change the sign, then we are allowed to do cross-canceling, only because at that point, instead of dividing, we then get to multiply fractions, so we get to cross-cancel. Okay, we do not use common denominators anytime for division or multiplication, no common denominators. But when we do get to addition and subtraction, for adding and subtracting fractions, we then get to use P.I.X.E.R, P-I-X-E-R, and that stands for the problem, improper for the I, X stands for what you multiply, E stands for the equivalent fraction, that's the fraction with the common denominator, and then R stands for reduce. That's for adding, subtracting fractions, where we do need a common denominator for that one. Okay, just some quick notes before we begin. So on number 1, I have the fraction where I have to do I heart K.F.C. So I'm going to make this one improper by multiplying 5 times 4, adding the 1, giving me 21 over 4. Dividing 2/3. Now then I do keep the first, flip the second, change the sign, keep the first one. I flip the second fraction and I get 3 over 2. And then I change the division to multiplication. Now I can multiply across when I multiply. I don't have anything to cancel, so I'm not going to do any canceling. I'm going to get 63 over 8. And when I simplify that, I get 7 and 7/8. Number 3, I'm going to skip, and you can do those questions yourself. I'm just going to do one from the product. So when I multiply, let me do number 5 here. When I have a negative fraction, I can just kind of put the negative to the side. I'm going to do improper here and make it 11 over 5, then keeping the negative just with 11. I'm going to multiply that with negative 1 over 5. I'm going to keep the negative with the 1. Okay, and then we are going to multiply across, so negative 11 times negative 1 gives me positive 11, and then 5 times 5 gives me 25. Now, even though this question happens to have the common denominators, it doesn't really matter when I'm multiplying them, and I don't really need it. So when I get to number 7, I'm going to change this fraction to improper, giving me 5 over 3, multiplying it with negative 3 over 2. The negative in the fraction, I could actually put the negative in between the number. I could put that fraction with the 3 in the numerator, or I can choose to put the negative with the denominator. In the end, my answer will just give me a positive fraction times a negative fraction, giving me then a positive times a negative should give me a negative answer, a negative fraction. So if I do that, I'm going to get 15 in my numerator, negative 6 in my denominator. I'm going to simplify that and divide both by 3, giving me 5 over negative 2, which is the same as 2.5, making sure that then my negative is with the whole number 2, because again, a negative fraction with a positive fraction when I multiply gives me a negative answer. And when I multiply, using the positive negative triangle to help me multiply would be very, very helpful. Negative times negative gives me a positive answer. Okay, or because I happen to have a negative times a positive, then I get a negative answer. Okay, here, for your homework, I know it says you must write out P.I.X.E.R for each of the questions now. Some of the questions, we'll just change this, some questions. So for the ones that we need to, then I would do it. For number 9, you can just go ahead and look at the numbers, P.I.X.E.R. At least knowing what they mean would be very helpful. I would write out the problem. I can make them improper, then do the x, which is multiply, figure out the equivalent fraction, and then reduce it. Now, they are equivalent because the denominators are the same, so I'm actually just going to make it improper. So I can write out the problem here like this. Okay. When I do the improper, this fraction becomes 20 over 7, and this is negative 11 over 7. Because I don't need to find a common denominator, I can just rewrite the 20 over 7 and negative 11 over 7 with the e part, and then when I reduce, I have 20 minus 11 over 7. That's really the same as 20 plus negative 11 over 7, if that's what you also got, which still gives me the answer 9 over 7, which is reduced to 2 and 2/7. I'm sorry, I meant 1 and 2/7. Okay. Number 11, you may not need to use P.I.X.E.R because if you are able to do it mentally, you do get the answer 0. Okay, because the same numbers, one is positive, one is negative. That means for teams, really it's a tie score, making it 0, neutral. Okay, skipping down to number 13, I'll use P.I.X.E.R for this question, P.I.X.E.R. P stands for the problem. I'm going to rewrite the problem. 1/2. Now a negative and negative, if I remember from when I did it without using fractions, these two both become a positive. So really I'm kind of adding 1/2 with 3 4/5. I is the improper, so I'm going to make 3 4/5 an improper by getting 9/5. X is what I'm going to multiply to get to a common denominator, which is then going to give me E. The common denominator will be 10 and 10. So I'm going to multiply the 2 times 5. Whatever I do to the denominator, I also do the numerator. So I'm multiplying, the X is the multiply 5, 5. Here I'm multiplying 2, 2, because 5 times 2 makes 10. So 19 times 2 is going to give me 38. 1 times 5 here gives me 5. When I do R, which is reduce, I'm going to reduce the fraction and add 5 plus 38 over 10, giving me 43 over 10. And if I write the mixed fraction, that will be 4 3/10. For your quiz tomorrow, make sure that you write all your answers in mixed. Number 15, we have this negative here. I'm going to do P.I.X.E.R. P is the problem, so I'm going to write it out, negative 3.5. Then over here, what's going to happen to the negative negative is they both become a positive, meaning this is going to be a positive 2 and 6. I means improper, so if I change it to improper, for the negative fraction, I'm just going to do the improper without the negative first, so I get 7 over 2. Then put the negative either with a 7 or with a 2, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to do the same for here, I'm going to do the improper, 12 plus 5, 17 over 6. Then the x means I'm going to multiply by a fraction that will get me to E. E is the equivalent. I'm just going to scoot this over a little bit. The equivalent fraction. The common denominator here will be 6 and 6. Now, this is already the same, so I'm just going to bring it over. For here, I do need 2 times 3 to get 6, so whatever I do to the denominator, I also do to the numerator. That gives me negative 21. Then I'm going to do R for P.I.X.E.R, and then I'm going to reduce that. Negative 21, I'm going to add it with 17 over 6. Negative 21 plus 17, I'm going to use my T for teams to help me. 17 is positive, 21 is negative. And when I figure out the difference between the scores, 4 is my answer. And that's the difference, and the negative team wins over 6. I can reduce this problem to negative 2 over 3. My final answer for number 15. Number 17 might be more of a mental math question. 2 plus 1 makes 3, and then the half will just be added on to the answer, giving you 3.5. You can do that way and not have to do P.I.X.E.R for 17. Okay, and then starting on the bottom of the worksheet, here we go. On the bottom of the worksheet, what we have is number 1, 12 fluid ounces is equal to blank cups. I'm only going to do a few questions from here. I start with 12 fluid ounces and put that over 1. I start with a fraction, making sure that it's improper. I create my second fraction, so I create the second fraction. And that second fraction will have cups in the numerator, fluid ounces in the denominator. Remember that the fluid ounces cancel out, giving me my final answer, which should be in cups. The measurements will be given to you on the test, but from page 245 is where you can find the conversion chart. 8 fluid ounces is equal to 1 cup, so that's the relationship that cups and fluid ounces share. Okay, cups and fluid ounces. Okay, then I just multiply 12 over 1 times 1 over 8. I can cancel the 12 and the 8, giving me 3 and 2, so I get 3 over 2 cups, which is really the same as 1.5 cups. I'm going to skip down to number 5. If I have 3 and 1/8 cup and I want to figure out how many fluid ounces that is, I'm going to start with the problem and make sure that it's an improper fraction, giving me 25 cups over 8. I'm going to multiply by my new fraction. The new fraction that I get should be the relationship between cups and fluid ounces. So I want my answer to be in fluid ounces, so I'm going to put that in the numerator. The answer always goes in the numerator. Cups at the bottom. That's why the cups cancel out, just like that, top and bottom. I know that 8 fluid ounces is equal to 1 cup based on problem number 1. If I multiply those two fractions together, actually very simply, I can cancel out these, and then the 8 and the 8 cancel out, and what we're going to get is just 25 fluid ounces. Very simply, huh? Worked out very nicely there. Seemed like a really hard question, but actually when you do use the fractions, they make it quite easy. Last question that I'm going to do is, how about number 8? Okay, 1 yard and 2 feet is equal to how many feet? The conversion is 3 feet is 1 yard. So actually that already tells us that this is going to be 3 feet. And if I have 3 feet with the 2 yards, with the 2 feet, then I just add those two up and get 5 feet. Okay. And maybe we'll do one more question then to help us. How about number 10? If I have 15 quarts and I want to figure out how many gallons that is, I start with 15 and make that a fraction. Quarts stays in the numerator. I need to always make sure that the fraction that I create has units with it. So I want the answer to be gallons, so that goes in the numerator. Quarts in the denominator, because again, quarts should be canceling out. So when I convert that, I know that there's 4 quarts for every 1 gallon. When I multiply those two fractions, I get 15 over 4, very simply. And if I reduce that, I get 3 3/4 gallons, and I'm done. Well, I hope you study hard, and if you have any more questions, we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. Anybody who is